Editorial note. For any of my readers who are at all familiar with the workings and machinations of chaos, I'm sure that you are more than aware that the attempted coup of the Iron Legion was certainly not the only betrayal of this nature. In Valkenheim, two clans suddenly rose up and attempted a wild siege on the neighboring territories. However, they were quickly silenced by the overwhelming force of the High King's own storm guard. However, the damage by that point had been done. And in the Maya, there was an assassination attempt on the Emperor by a few daimyo with clear ties to the chaotic powers. Fortunately, the Emperor, much like Queen Eleanor, was ferried away before his life could be taken. At this point, Heathmoor was in complete disarray and confusion, exactly what chaos thrives on. But this did not break the resolve of the Night Warden or his retinue. In fact, those that were already privy to the existence of this threat were already talking amongst themselves about what steps would need to be taken, and, of course, what were the whereabouts of the Chaos Forces. Moreover, what exactly were they up to? In this, I confess that I offered my assistance again, and we shall resume our story at the main fortress of Akshire, where, for the first time in Heathmoor's history, the Queen of Ashfeld, the Emperor of the Maya, and the High King of Valkenheim were finally going to meet in the same room. It's important to also mention that this was the first time I was personally summoned to the council on this affair. After learning of the Iron Legion's betrayal, I had returned to Heathmoor to inspect the damage and to investigate Derek of Faldmarsh's corpse to see if I could learn anything of their intentions. That was when I was approached by a knight of the Noble Legion asking me to come to Akshire at once. I was simply too intrigued to say no, so if it's not too presumptuous of me to do so, I would like to share the story from my own personal log. When I arrived at the meeting, I can only describe the air as thick. Knights, samurai, Vikings, and the Wulin all stood around, sulking, glowering at each other, and some even getting into small tussles, only for higher-ranking members of their ranks to break up the brawls. Of course, I couldn't particularly blame any of them for their distrust or their agitation. Chaos has a way of leaving that impression of anger and disunity. However, when I entered rooms or corridors, I noticed eyes always darting in my direction. Undoubtedly, I definitely stood out. This was to be expected. In this world, my inquisitorial greatcoat, my las pistol at my waist, my power sword, my weapons and arms obviously looked starkly different to anything these people had seen before. And it wasn't long before all of this commotion led Night Warden William to discovering me. "I'm grateful you're here," William said to me after finding me somewhere in the keep of the Citadel. "The three leaders are in a council right now, discussing next steps, and I felt it would help if you were in attendance. You could maybe explain some things to them." I followed him without argument, excited to finally see these three monarchs for myself. I was led deep into the Citadel gate, and out into a larger room that was surprisingly empty save for 5 figures. The High King of Valkenheim stood, pacing back and forth like a Lord General glowering at a picked caster, showing him a losing battle, cursing and mumbling to himself. The Emperor of the Maya was far more stoic, sitting on a series of small cushions, his head bowed and eyes closed, his beard and mustache trimmed and his topknot adjusted just so, wearing the finest of grey and blue silks. Meanwhile, the poor Queen Eleanor sat on a cushioned armchair, constantly adjusting her dress and her crown and her hair nervously. She was the youngest in the room by far, the other 2 monarchs outstripping her in age by at least 2 decades, and neither even glancing in her direction. The other figure leaning against the far wall was none other than Tian Qilong, the Blue Dragon Corps commander, who was stroking his long white beard, his weapon left by the door so as to show he was not a threat to anyone. And finally, of course, Night Warden William himself, who was walking to the center of the room to introduce me. I followed quietly. "My lords and ladies, the Inquisitor has arrived." Now, when such an announcement is normally made, the reaction in the room is often one of almost annoying terror. Humans leap in shock and horror, faces go white, and more than once I've seen grown men soil themselves. You see, in the Imperium, the Inquisition is more terrifying than even some of the enemies of man, which is a fact I find tiresome and irritating. While I'm sure some, perhaps even many, of my fellow Inquisitors reading this find comfort and amusement in this paltry display of fear and terror, I must wonder how we can be seen as the defenders of our Imperium when our very name sparks horror in our own citizens and peers. I suppose it's necessary, but I will never appreciate it. Here, though, I'm surprised to say I had no such reaction. In fact, Qinglong gave me a nod of acknowledgement. "I hope that my ward is well," he asked me. I nodded back politely. "Zhu Ying is doing quite well, my friend," I assured him. "She's safe with my people and will remain that way a little longer. She wanted me to tell you she's happy but confused with what she's learned.
Good. I look forward to seeing her again soon when you are done with her.
I then turned to face the monarchs. Eleanor smiled at me, but still appeared uncomfortable. The Emperor glanced at me but a moment, but then said nothing, and the High King of Valkenheim simply snorted and shook his head.
So you're the one with the answers. You can explain this whole cult nonsense?
Well, I can try, I answered.
Then start by explaining just what the hell they are, he snapped. I thought we were done with this nonsense when the green beasts were dealt with. Now I've got raving lunatics bursting out of every town and village in Valkenheim, ravaging my people and killing my soldiers. 3 Jarls have died in just 2 weeks.
I, too, have suffered losses, the Emperor finally spoke up. 2 of my daimyo have defected and are laying waste to my subjects. The Maya has been all but evacuated, and I wish to understand why.
Eleanor started to speak, but fell silent again, meek as a kitten. I smiled at her encouragingly, but then turned my attention back to the group as a whole. Well, I'm sure Tian Qilong has given you a rough explanation. After all, were you not present when I explained chaos previously?
I tried, he admitted. But I confess, even after hearing your words, I don't quite understand it all myself.
And he couldn't be blamed, of course. To be honest, I'm willing to believe that the majority of the Imperium citizens don't know the true nature of the great enemy. Nor do they want to, because my colleagues have done a fine job of keeping it a secret. And if the Inquisition wants to keep something a secret, no one's going to try to learn about it. Well then, I shall do my best to enlighten all of you. But I must warn you that the nature of what you're facing is a secret that cannot leave this room. For if the knowledge I'm about to share with you were to pass beyond this room and your ears, it would only add to our current problems.
I believe that is for us to determine, the Emperor growled.
Ordinarily, yes, but seeing as I am an Inquisitor, and I have the knowledge you so desire, I'm afraid it is my determination. Either you agree to secrecy, or I walk out that door and handle these matters the way I am used to.
And what exactly are you used to? The High King demanded.
I am used to complete and utter eradication of the enemies of mankind, I answered shortly. And if that means I burn a world to cinders, then I'm afraid I'll have to do it. The look on their faces said all that needed saying. They didn't want to believe one man was capable of that, and yet the tone of my voice had clearly sparked a degree of trepidation. Ladies and gentlemen, I've gone to some lengths to keep your world alive. I'd hate to see all that go to waste.
Very well, the Emperor nodded. We will keep your secret. Now speak.
Very well. This world you live on, frankly, is primitive by my standards, and by the standards of much of mankind. You see, the world you know is but a small speck in the grand scheme of humanity and the galaxy at large, I began. To put it bluntly, when you look at the stars each night, each one of them is part of a network of star systems and worlds so vast, so large, and so diverse that even thinking too hard on it would make your reality spin. But mankind, right now, is locked in ceaseless war with forces that would see us destroyed, and frankly, the war is not going our way. We stand on the razor's edge of destruction every day, and it is my job as an Inquisitor to ensure that we do not topple. I could tell the monarchs were skeptical, but none said anything. The green monsters, I continued, that you fought, we call them orcs or greenskins. They are one of the many forces we fight, though the ones you encountered were weaker in body and weaponry than what we are used to.
What? They were weaker?
William gasped. Considerably, I confessed. But please don't take that as an insult, Night Warden. Even an entire regiment of Imperial Guard troopers would have struggled to face what you and your allies did on that volcano. You have earned my respect for your actions, and that's no light feat.
Get on with it, the High King snapped.
I sighed. Ordinarily, I could have had him shot for interrupting me, but I needed to make nice here. I wasn't working with Imperial citizens, after all. Sorry. As I was saying, what I did not know was that your world has already been infested with another enemy of the galaxy, an enemy that mankind refers to as chaos, or the ruinous powers. They have likely been here longer than even the greenskins, perhaps biding their time for the chance to strike. I believe the greenskins' activity forced them to hasten their plans and actions. That is why they're acting now in desperation.
But what are they exactly?
Eleanor asked. My dear, I'm afraid that is not an easy thing to explain. But I shall do my best. I struggled momentarily to think of a proper analogy. Have you ever seen a frozen lake before? I'm sure I sounded crazy because none of them even said a thing to that. A lake that is frozen over is an analogy we will use for this explanation. Imagine that the world you see and interact with is on top of a frozen surface, and beneath the ice, hidden from view, is a world you can't fathom. Creatures live within it, and the water below swirls and moves in cunning and unknowable ways. By Odin's beard, would you make sense? The High King snapped. Very well, this realm that I'm referring to is called the Warp, I finally said coldly, glancing at him with warning. And you can think of the Warp as the underside of that frozen lake. It's only a thin layer away from you, always present, but just out of reach. Ordinarily, you could walk on this lake and never upset the waters underneath, but that doesn't mean the creatures below don't take notice. Those creatures that dwell in the Warp, or rather below the lake, are creatures of ruinous destructive power, and those who worship and pray to those beasts are chaos cultists. So what are the powers they offer? The Emperor asked. Why worship beasts beneath a lake? Well, the creatures of the Warp are no mere fish, I explained. They are intelligent, malicious, and crafty. They seek the destruction of everything in our reality. On the other side of the ice, if you prefer. They can't interact with it directly due to the ice, but they will offer blessings and powers where they can. For example, Your Highness, do you remember when your Derek of Faldmarsh transformed into a monster before your eyes?
Yes. It is a vision that still haunts me. The beast he became. Is that one of the creatures of which you mentioned?
Yes. You see, when a follower of these monsters offers himself to them fully, sometimes they're given strength, knowledge, direction, pleasures. Sometimes their entire bodies will be warped beyond recognition as they're taken over by the powers that they so worship.
All right, so where is this ice? The High King asked. How do we stay away from it? How do we avoid them?
It is everywhere, Your Highness, I explained. You can't avoid it because the Warp is parallel to our reality.
Like a realm of spirits, then? The Emperor asked.
Yes, that's an apt way of looking at it, I conceded, glad they were starting to grasp the issue.
I just find it so hard to believe that our citizens would so easily be persuaded by these beasts. Should they not be loyal to their clans, kin, and country? The High King asked.
Were it only so simple as that? The beasts of the Warp have many ways to appeal to mankind's weaknesses. Jealousy, vanity, anger, lust, fear, all of these things are weaknesses that chaos uses to whisper in our ears. They offer freedom from weakness, pain, and death. They offer promises. They whisper lies that weaker minds and souls will believe without question. You need not blame yourself for the faults of your people, Your Highness. Better men than you have fallen prey to the whispers of the ruinous gods.
Gods, you say? What gods? Are they likened to the Iser?
There are 4 principal gods of chaos that we have identified, and they appeal to different weaknesses and desires. Nurgle, for example, deals in plague and pestilence. Tzeentch deals in sorcery, knowledge, and trickery. Khorne deals in war, murder, and hatred, and Slaanesh deals in pleasures, lust, and decadence. However, I believe what you face is not one of these gods, but rather an ambassador of all of them, a demon of chaos unified.
So they seek our destruction, the Emperor gasped. Well, what have we done to them to earn their anger?
Done? My friends, I'm afraid you still don't quite understand chaos. They don't act because of reason or rationale. They act because they seek dominion. Your planet appeals to them for some reason, and thus they now seek claim over it. However, it would be hubris to believe all of the gods directly find your land appealing. More than likely, they don't particularly care. My guess is that a demon is making moves on your world and is hoping to incur favor with his gods through your destruction.
How can you know this? Qinglong asked. Do you know them so well?
Not personally, I chuckled. I conferred with a contact of mine in the Ordo Malleus, and he... let's just say I have connections who help me form an educated guess. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Inquisitor Theorin of the Ordo Malleus for his assistance in the matters at hand. My point is this, I continued. If any of the Chaos Gods were that interested in your world, you wouldn't merely be facing small patches of cultists, but a full invasion of Chaos Beasts, traitorous Astartes, and... I'm afraid if I go further it will confuse you again. To put it simply, you are being targeted by a demon in service of the ruinous powers. But that is likely the extent of the larger issue.
It doesn't change the threat, the High King growled. So, how do we go about killing this demon?
I'm afraid that killing it isn't truly the issue, I explained. Remember the frozen lake analogy I used? Well, the demon is just another fish under the ice. It can't get out of the ice to do anything to you as it is. It cannot touch you, and you cannot touch it.
Then how the devil do we stop this cult? Warden William demanded.
To put it bluntly, the cult wants to make a hole in the ice for the fish to get out, I explained. That analogy finally kicked in. The Emperor actually got to his feet, and the High King stopped pacing.
They want to summon it?
Eleanor squeaked.
How? The High King demanded. How is that possible?
Your world, Your Majesty, is a world of near-endless bloodshed. Death, destruction, and plague are all actions that send ripples through the water beneath the ice. Small ripples, once or twice, maybe a few times in a while, won't do much, but make enough of them. Create enough at a specific point, and eventually the ice weakens there. Weakens enough for a ritual to break it open. Think of the ritual as a rock thrown at the ice.
Yes, I think I understand, the High King groaned, his face growing pale. Are you saying that we laid the groundwork for this? Our centuries of war allowed for this?
I wouldn't be so hard on yourself, sire. I'm hardly in a position to cast judgment. The Imperium of Man has been in ceaseless war far longer than this world has been around, I explained. The issue here is not that your people are at war. The issue is that these cultists plan to turn the animosity, bloodshed, and destruction of your conflict into a tool to break open the warp, or ice, and call on this demon.
Then we stop them, William cried. I'll lead my noble legion and we'll crush them before they can...
My dear Night Warden, you have no idea what you're saying, I sighed. You can't fight them alone. Even if you were to make your way to their stronghold, they will by now have summoned their own strongest to aid them. You may expect lesser warp beasts, powered-up acolytes of the ruinous powers. There's even a slim likelihood of traitorous Astartes present. Your meager force wouldn't even get to the ritual site, let alone make a difference. No, I'm afraid I will have to deal with this issue.
You?
Qinglong asked. I will organize a strike team of sororitas of the Ecclesiarchy. Think of them as special force soldiers. We'll fly into the site of the cult, disrupt the ritual, and put an end to this madness.
So, we can trust you to handle this issue? The Emperor asked.
Partially. The problem is that I'm not invincible myself. Once the cultists wise up to my approach, they will try to stop me.
Then you need a distraction, William replied.
And your legion is not as efficient enough one to do the job. I'm afraid I must ask for a unified force between your peoples to assist me.
A unified force?
Eleanor asked.
You want us to form an alliance? The High King asked.
I'm afraid that is the long and short of it.
And if we refuse? The Emperor asked.
Then you will die. With your honor surely intact, but you will die all the same, as your world burns around you, I said curtly. Lady and gentlemen, this is not a matter for debate, but a point of fact. Either you three learn to play nice, or your world doesn't stand a chance. I will give you some time to deliberate the issue, but we will need to act fast in either case. My words, as I expected, had an immediate effect on the three monarchs, and I politely stepped back to hear them deliberate amongst themselves. They all stared at each other a while, none speaking.
It's hard to even think about, the High King growled.
Is it? The Emperor asked. Not a year ago, the noble legion, the daimyo of Amaku, and Raffenfeld itself met in this very place to discuss an alliance.
They aren't us, the High King challenged. 1,000 years of bloodshed can't just be forgotten like that. Cross, Stegander, and Ayu couldn't do it. The Lord Warden couldn't do it. The Truce of Wyverndale didn't do it. Peace fails every time. It is a fool's errand. So then you're of like mind to Apollyon, the Emperor asked, that we are merely meant to
fight and kill each other for eternity? Seems that she would have been very much approved of this cult.
More than likely, Korn himself would have found her most intriguing. Not that I would profess to have any understanding of the machinations of the ruinous powers, because that would certainly be blasphemy.
Of course I don't agree with that mad woman, the High King cried. But do you honestly think that even if we were to shake hands and come to terms here, that our people will just blindly follow? We are their leaders. It is their duty to follow, the Emperor retorted. He pulled a folding fan from his robe and held it close to his chin as if to fan himself, yet he barely moved it, almost as if he treated the fan as a sort of symbol of his own authority. My people have endured every hardship this world can throw at them. We lost our ancestral home to the cataclysm. We were forced to endure humiliations and shame by taking up residence in a swampy mire that we now call home. We have struggled to protect this meager dwelling of ours from the likes of Vikings, knights, Wulin. We have forged unlikely alliances before, and we will again. I, for one, will not sit quietly as this foreign cult ravages the home we have bled and died for. I will fight.
A hush fell over the room as the Emperor slammed his fan closed and sat back down, his eyes closed and his motion set. The High King groaned and crossed his arms.
And what about you?
He turned his glare upon Eleanor, who squeaked in surprise, her young age showing again.
Do you have something to say?
Forgive my silence. I was afraid to speak out.
You're a queen, aren't you? Take some pride in yourself, the High King snorted.
Eleanor nodded shyly before speaking.
I am still very young, and new to much of this royal game. I'm afraid of sending my soldiers to battle, for I fear their death. I do not relish the prospect of knowing my words will send hundreds to their demise. However, I also realize now, after the betrayal of Derek, that inaction and complacency leads to even more death than poor direction. This cult, it seeped its way into our society without my even noticing, and this I cannot abide. As Queen of Ashfeld, I will not let this cult do as it pleases any longer. I'll take up a sword myself if I must. But I declare that I will use my full authority to unite the legions of Ashfeld. Every knight under my charge will bear arms against this cult and see it destroyed. I call a crusade.
Knight Warden William went rigid at her words, as if they were what he'd been waiting to hear. The High King looked from each of them, and then myself before smirking.
My forefathers would think me a true coward were my mortal enemies to make such bold claims, and I might not make my own pledge. I'll be honest. I despise Ashfeld and the mire. Your people have never done mine any good, and our war has cost us greatly. I'm not sure if Jarl Reynold was right about the idea of making truces with your lot. I always thought him a bit soft for it. And yet, it was he who laid down everything against the green demons, while I did nothing. What he did, his death, was worthy of Odin's Hall, and a death we should all be envious of. So I say let's have it. The horns of Valkenheim will sound with yours.
Then it is decided, Qinglong asked, stepping up as well. My Emperor Gao Lei cannot be here, nor could he provide sufficient troops in time. But you have the support of the Blue Dragon Corps and myself. I will join you on this. What was it? A crusade?
Yes, a crusade. But where to? Where is the ritual site?
I can't say for sure. It was Zhu Ying who discovered it. Her gifts of perception are very impressive. She told me that she felt a strange power coming from a specific place, and she could see it in a dream. What place did she see? Qinglong asked. She said it is the place where it all began, when chaos first touched this world, when the dark powers first scarred your lands. Any idea what she meant by that? I am not sure, the Emperor answered. No one knows when this cult first arrived, or when they started making problems for us. Wait, William muttered. Where it all began? When dark powers first scarred our lands? She may mean the cataclysm.
The cataclysm, the High King scoffed. That was 1,000 years ago, and it shook the whole earth. You think the cult has been here that long?
Do you know what caused the cataclysm? I asked seriously. Eleanor shrugged.
No one is certain. There are rumors and legends, but nothing concrete. I'm afraid that it is a mystery to us.
Did Shu Ying say anything else? Chenglong asked. She did mention the place where the Immortal One sleeps. Suddenly there was a stiff silence, one filled with trepidation that even made me uneasy. It can't be, William whispered. I'm not sure I follow. What does the Immortal One mean? I asked. There's a legend, William explained. Long ago, there was a warden, the first warden, named Ramyel, who forged a kingdom that would protect all peoples, all nations, all cultures. But one day, the world shook, nations splintered, and unknown warriors poured into our world. Giants in black armor and great heaving beasts. Ramyel called upon the might of the Wyverns to defend our land and world. The legends say that he won the battle, but all the Wyverns died along with him. And some say that this was the day the cataclysm first took place, at that great battle. The first battle of Wyverndale. Could that be when chaos first touched our world? The Emperor asked. Your legend mentioned giants in black armor? I asked, my thoughts instantly turning to the traitor legions. Sounds more than likely. Perhaps this isn't the first attempt on your world made by this demon. Where did this battle take place? Wyverndale, William answered. It took place at Wyverndale. Are we sure that it's there, though? The High King demanded. We're staking a lot on hunches. The place where peace was shattered by black giants bent on destruction. The place where Astria launched her draconite corruption. The place where the chalice was removed by the pirates. No, it couldn't be any other place. The cult is at Wyverndale, and they're planning a new cataclysm.